All right, here we have a story about the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. Do I have a picture of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe? I think that I do. Let's see. Here we have. Let's see if I can get a picture up here. Here is the previous. There it is. See a picture of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. But the communists, they took over Russia in about 1920 or something like that. That's when his father passed away. But before that, there were the Tsar. And the Tsar also ruled with an iron hand. And especially there was a lot of times when they made these pogroms and accused the Jews of things because the Tsar was, his government was failing, and one way to unify the people was against the Jews. So they would make these pogroms. This went on for a long time. When the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, he must have been in his teens. In any case, he was sent by his father to try to negate some sort of a terrible decree from the Tsarist government against the Jews. So he went to Petersburg. That was, I guess, where the big offices were. And he went and he tried and he looked and he couldn't make any progress. He made no progress. Everywhere he went, the doors were closed for him. Now, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was a very intelligent person. He was very brave. And he was also a very pleasant person, a very, what do you say, knowledgeable and also pleasant. So he got with all these people and made friends. Nothing happened. Nothing helped. So he went back home. And he told his father that he had failed. He was there for several weeks or a month, whatever, and it failed. At that time, his father had his talit over his shoulder. Let's see, I have a talit over my. I have one here. Just a second. There we go. See, and his talit was over his shoulder like this. Here we go. Excuse me. His talit was over his shoulder, and before he was praying, he was looking at the tzitzit of this talit. This is a big talit you put over your head when you pray. He was looking at it. So he said to his father, these things were, that he went and he tried, nothing would help. So his father said that there was a story about his father, who the father of the previous Rebbe, his father was called the Rebbe Marash, Rebbe Shmuel. And he once went into his father that he had also was assigned to do something and he couldn't. And his father was looking at the tzitzit and he said that the tzitzit represents God's power drawing down from the essence of God. This is the thing that covers over into the world. And that gives power to blind the eyes of evil. That's what we're learning about in L'chutei Torah, right? In the morning, blind eyes. He understood what it was. He kissed the tzitzis and he left. He didn't say any more. His father didn't say, you can do it or whether. He left. So he went, he heard, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, he heard that there was some big professor and that maybe he could talk to him. The professor was not an anti-Semite. And he went and spoke to this professor. In order to got some sort of an invitation to him, and they sat and they spoke, and the professor was just so enthralled to speak with the Rebbe because it was a professor of philosophy or something, and they spoke about these deep things, and he was just so interested, and so what do you say? The conversation was just so interesting to him, to this professor. He really made good friends with the previous Rebbe. The professor was not Jewish. Really good friends with him. And he said, such a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much. So the Rebbe said, but why are you here? What did you come for? So he told him the whole problem. So there's this terrible decree, and I want to get the decree rescinded. And the one that's making this decree is Stalipin. Stalipin, he was like the minister of the interior of the army, whatever it is, of the police. Anyway, so he was the one that. So the professor said, listen, He's a big anti-Semite. He's a he's a genius man. He was my pupil. He said, it happened to be that he was my pupil. The professor said, he was my pupil. It could be that that even is the reason why the Rebbe went to see him, because he heard that this professor had been the teacher of Stolypin. So he said, listen, he was my pupil, was very genius, but he's also very stubborn. He's very cruel. And you won't even be able to get in. So let me just try to get in. Is there any way you can get in? So the professor said, okay, listen, I'm giving you my card or something to get in, or some password or whatever it is to get in. And you can use this to go in. To go in. Now, this decree was a decree that was going to cost a lot of lives if you made the decree. It was some sort of another pogrom or whatever. Anyway, whatever it was. So either he gave him this card, I don't remember what it was. Anyway, he said, okay, but the only time you can go and see him is going to be on Saturday in the daytime. So the previous rabbi said, is no problem. I guess it was already Friday or something. So he went, the previous Rebbe, he went to a place that was nearby in Peterburg. It was a bar. And he went to this bar right before nightfall. And he stayed there in this bar. And there were all these ruffians and, low-life people in the bar, and they were commanding. But he was like I say, was a very friendly person, very intelligent person. And despite the fact that these people were anti-Semites, but they were also tremendously bored. And he was very interesting. So somehow or other, he managed to stay there the whole entire night in this bar. And early in the morning, he left and made his way to this big office where Stolypin was. Now, this professor said, I'm giving you this card or this number, this password, but if they ask you, if they catch you, the word is, you have to tell them that you stole it. He said, I'm going to deny the whole thing. I'll tell them that it was stolen. I won't say that I gave it to you. And you'll probably have to pay with your life. The Rebbe said, okay, no problem. So he went to Peterburg. Amazingly, nobody asked him for any credentials. Went to this big building, this main huge building where this was where Stolypin usually sat. He gave the password to the guard. The guard looked at him, a religious Jew, what in the world? But he gave him the password, or he gave him this card, whatever it was, he gave it to him, and he let him in. And the Rebbe is walking in this huge, massive building, with marble floors and, ornate, whatever it is, the chandeliers hanging from this huge, the high ceiling, it's like 3-4 stories high. And he's walking in and he looks at all the rooms, goes by the rooms, and he's looking for Stolypin's name, and it's not there. So he sees someone go up the stairs. So he goes up the stairs also as well. And he passes by a room, and it's Stolypin's room. It says on it Stolypin. And it just so happened to be that Stolypin had just left his room. So he turned the handle and he entered. He entered the room. He entered this big office. And the secretary also wasn't there. He went into Stolypin's room, and he saw that there were papers on the table. And of course, all the time he was praying and saying words of Torah. He took from one of the papers, he saw a whole pile of papers that had not yet been looked at, and another pile of papers that had been looked at. And he looked through the papers that had not been examined yet, and he saw that there was the decree that he was talking about. There was the decree. And he took out the decree, and he looked, and he found a stamp that said, canceled. And he stamped this thing, it said canceled, and he stuck it into the papers that had already been looked at. And immediately he got up and he left. He ran and left the room, and wasn't noticed. It was an incredible miracle. And that's what his father said, that these strings of the tzitzit, they blind the eyes of the forces of evil, that he was not noticed. And amazingly, there's a similar story also about the Rebbe, but I'll tell you at another time, about Jews that tried to make a decree. And he left the office, And miraculously, he was not caught. He was not caught. He was not noticed at all. And the decree had been rescinded. And that's how the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he was only in his teenage years, maybe it was in his 20s, it could be, but he risked his life in order to save the Jewish people from a terrible pogrom. We have to have courage, and we have to have a lot of help from the Creator, but success is assured. That's why we need Mashiach now, and why we'll succeed in bringing him right now. Have a good day. God bless you all.